So for people that don't know about what you do and who you are and what you specialize in, can you kind of just go into that and maybe talk about Stinky,
Yeah,
your Malinois?
yeah. So, I got into dog training a while ago, and throughout my years, I've been lucky to have a lot of experience with different types of stuff. And so that's how I got into raising Stinky, who was my last Malinois, and I had him for about a year. Okay, you need to stop. Um, and he, after about a year, went into police work. So he's currently being finished as a dual purpose patrol dog, meaning he'll do apprehension and detection, either narcotics detection or explosives or both. Um, and then I got this guy a couple weeks ago, and him I'm hoping to keep and trial in the sport PSA with. And that's what I was going to do with Stinky if I ended up keeping him, but he was better off doing what he's doing now, and hopefully he'll be good for the sport and that kind of thing. Hi. Um, but yeah, so now I personally, this is just kind of what I do for fun, really. But professionally, right now, I specialize in service dogs. So raising, placing, taking green dogs that are older and placing them, and helping people who train their own and all that kind of stuff. And that's actually how I got started. My interest in dog training initially was working with guide dogs for the blind, which is, I don't think it's over the whole US, but I think it's like pretty large in North America. And they just train just guide dogs. So, and they take puppy raisers as volunteers. So that's how I got started when I was really young with my family.
Hmm. Can you go over the process of what it's like getting a service dog, like selecting a service dog? Like who is selecting it? Is it the person that says like I need a service dog, or a doctor that says this person needs a service dog?
Yeah, so the sweetness of the laws in America mean that it's super, what? It's super um, open ended. Like there's no select path to do it. And you can pretty much do almost anything, and it's technically legal. And so, okay, all right. And so that makes it super easy for owner trainers to, all right, go away, go away. That makes it super easy for, huh? Sorry about that. Um,
No, no, you're good.
Yeah, so that makes it super easy for anybody to get a service dog, whether or not they have, $30,000 or not. But it also means that people often do it incorrectly, even with the best of intentions. So the ideal method that you would go through is to either, sometimes a doctor will suggest it, or a patient will, a client, whatever, will bring it up with their doctor and see what they think. And usually somehow a doctor is involved, and then they're approved or it's suggested or whatever. And then from there, the person has to decide whether they want to train their own or get one that's already trained. And so if you're going to get one that's already trained, there's a lot of programs out there, but the issue with them that I've found is usually that either, well, two things is either one, they're super expensive and most people can't afford them, or they're free, but the wait list is like 5 years long, because to meet that demand, they can only have so many dogs. And so, or the third issue is you get programs like Guide Dogs for the Blind, which are really big and place a lot of dogs, but they only do guide dogs. You know what I mean? So for someone who has, maybe a more rare illness or something like that, there's just not organizations that train dogs for them. And so they usually have to go and train their own, which is, again, is totally legal in the US, and I love that. Um, Ideally, what then would happen is a person would reach out to a professional dog trainer, such as myself, who specializes in service dogs. A lot of people say they train service dogs, but they don't know what they're doing. Um, and then from there, they would find a prospect, is what it's called. It's not a legal term, it's just what we call it, which is a dog who has the genetic traits we believe to be a service dog, but needs to go into training. And so that could either be a puppy or an older dog. I'm about to actually probably raise a puppy this next year. And then I've also taken dogs that were 1 year old or 8 months, something like that, and then I've trained them and placed them as well. You did a live with the helping pup a few weeks ago, and her dog Atlas is one that I got when he was around 9 months old. I started him and then I placed him with her, and so he was a but luckily everything else about him was kind of perfect for service work. The lower drive was actually what made him so good for it. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different routes people can go, and I wish more people went the right ways, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. So it's interesting that you brought up the helping pup, because
Yeah,
she definitely changed my perspective in terms of like emotional support animal, service dogs, and
yeah,
just dogs that people want their dogs around. Like, we're in LA, there's
yeah,
dogs everywhere.
yeah,
Like, people are bringing their dogs into work. Like, it's not a big deal at all. Like,
yeah,
earlier today, I trained her at the Vons in Glendale.
yeah,
Um, but after talking to Kristen and like hearing about her, like how she has to deal with other untrained dogs, it's definitely changed my mindset. And also, like, I take training really, really seriously. Like, if I'm going to bring Rika into a public place, she's
yeah,
in work mode.
yeah.
And like, if she is not like in that zone, like, we got to leave, because it's just not respectful.
Good, good, good.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
and I think that definitely, I mean, location probably affects it as well. But I mean, I'm in Northern California, and so a similar a similar mindset, especially if you go into like San Francisco or Santa Cruz. It's like Santa Cruz is like known for being such a dog friendly city.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, what you do is rare in training her and making sure that she's equipped to handle the situation she's in. A lot of people see dog friendly as any dog can go there, which is maybe true, but I think people should think about, should my dog go there? You know what I mean? Just because he's allowed, is that something that's good for him? Is it good for me? Is it good for everybody else? Is it appropriate? Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I wish that was more of a widely spread mindset, because I think that unfortunately a lot of places are becoming less dog friendly because people bring their dogs in no matter what they're like. And it's kind of ruining it for owners like you who are training your dog and are training them to be able to handle those situations. But I'm betting, a lot of, especially outdoor dining, are banning dogs now and stuff like that, where otherwise it was allowed. So that's pretty unfortunate, but I mean, what can you do?
Yeah. But okay, so then this brings me to the next question is, okay, so now we have the flight.
Yeah,
With Rika, should I go ahead and um like pay, how does it work with getting an emotional support animal?
yeah.
Is
So
that what you do?
because emotional support animals are considered pets, they're not covered under what's called the Air Carrier Access Act, and that's what protects service animals. But because ESAs are pets, they're not under that, and so every airline can make their own rules. So you would have to really check with the specific airline that you're flying with. Some of them don't allow certain breeds, or some of them have a weight limit. It's kind of tricky because, especially like talking to them, most of them don't seem to know what their policy is. So it can be kind of difficult to figure out, but hopefully the website will have the information you need. But I would guess that to fly with an emotional support animal, no matter what the airline is, you would have to have a doctor's note, and maybe vaccination records, but I'm not sure. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, something like that. Um, but yeah, it really does depend on the airline, because they're allowed to make their own rules. So
Hmm. And then what about for the people that are like, I don't want to deal with the paperwork? What about like putting a harness on and doing that whole ish?
I mean, to be honest, I don't think you need to. I think that the laws are so relaxed that it's like so easy to do it. I think that you don't need to just take your dog on. Like, I think that you do actually have to sign up. Like, when you book your flight, you can mark like whether you have an animal or a wheelchair or whatever. And so if you mark that, then you have to submit the paperwork. And if you don't, then I just think they won't let you on. It has to be documented. And I think that's because, I don't know why that is. I think they have a number of animals limited per flight, so they have to document them. But yeah, I mean, there's no standards for emotional support animals at all. So really, if you just have the doctor's note and you vaccinated your dog, like, you can do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What should I do to get Rika prepared for the flight?
When's your flight?
Well, I haven't booked the flight yet.
Oh, okay.
So, but I want it to be on Tuesday of next week. The flights are super cheap, obviously because of COVID.
Yeah.
I know this whole thing everything is very sensitive. Family is very important to me. My own mental health is important to me.
For sure.
So, like, I want to go home.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah. So, what should we do about Rika?
Well, I think that if you've done a lot of training with her, she should be fine. I think that also the minimum is so low that you're already like way above it, which is good. But I mean, I think that the most difficult part for her, besides the actual flight, would be TSA, because she either has to be patted down by a TSA employee or she has to go through completely naked. So no leash, no collar, nothing. And so depending on her skills, I would maybe not opt for the no leash part unless you're really confident that she can do it. Otherwise, just make sure she's good with being patted down. I mean, maybe it's a little bit too late to muzzle train her for Tuesday, but if you wanted to, you could put a muzzle on her just for TSA. It depends on her really and what you think she can.
Yeah. Can you repeat that again? So she has to go naked through the metal detector, or how?
Yeah, so there's two options that you can do, which is one, they can go through with no gear at all with you. And so for dogs that have like a really strong off-leash heel or something, that can be a good option for them, because then they get to go through with their handler and they don't have to like be out in the TSA environment on their own. But because of that, they can't be wearing anything because they're going through with you. So if their collar sets off the detector, they don't know who it is. So that's why they have to be totally free of any metal. Or if you wanted to have her keep everything on for like safety, then she will be patted down because she will set off the detector, and then they just make sure she doesn't have like bombs on her or anything. It's totally routine. A lot of dogs like it. I mean, my dog just thinks he's being pet, but
Yeah.
nervous around people or anything like that. You have to kind of weigh what she's able to do and what is best for her, and figure out what you want to do. TSA can't tell you one way or another what you have to do, so it's totally your choice. But it's very specific to you, really.
Cody Bear Paws, can you go through with no metal, or does it still have to be naked?
It depends. I think a lot of it depends on the TSA agent. Like, there's really no standard, unfortunately, because I've flown a few times, and sometimes they pat him down when it doesn't go off, but he's wearing things. Sometimes they don't pat him down if he doesn't go off, but sometimes he'll be wearing nothing and he still gets patted down. So, I mean, I've done it pretty much every way that you can, and pretty much they just kind of do what they want. So, whether they get patted down or not isn't really up to you. Unless, I think, if they're like totally naked, they won't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it all goes back to that like idea of training your dog, and if your dog is ready to be in that role of,
Yeah.
I'm in service
That's true too.
work mode.
Yeah, and that's why, you know, for a service animal, that should not be a problem. You know what I mean? Either the service animal has the skills to go through with no gear on, or they should have a temperament where they're fine with being pet and being patted down. And so, this is kind of a different point, but that's part of the reason that you need a dog who's temperamentally stable, because, even if people aren't supposed to pet your dog, they will, and there are situations like these where they have to, and your dog can't be like freaking out because of it.
Yeah. Rika definitely doesn't have that problem, but
Yeah.
she has other problems. Oh, okay. So eating and drinking.
Yeah.
What should we do about that?
So it depends on what time your flight is, but usually I'll restrict food for a day, which is kind of drastic for some people, but I just don't want to worry about it. I don't want to deal with that. So I just don't feed for 24 hours before a flight. And then, I don't have to worry about that. And my dog has like an impeccable bladder. Like sometimes I think that he has a problem because he can hold it for like 15 hours. So I don't restrict water for him too much, but his first flight, I didn't know how he was going to do, so I did restrict overnight because our flight was like at 3 a.m., so that wasn't a problem. If your flight is at like 5 p.m. or something like that, I would just give some in the morning and then none for the rest of the day. But again, it depends on your dog and how long they can hold it and like whether they're going to be like super like thirsty the whole day. But kind of going into that, I avoid making the dog feel like they're thirsty. So I'm not going to run him on the treadmill and then say he can't have water. You know what I mean? Or play fetch for an hour and then say no water. Instead I like to do training, or I'll just take them out to sniff at a field and, they can walk around and it's not super, like getting them panting and like, getting their heart rate up. So it's kind of like a give and take of, they don't get water, but also, don't really exercise them a lot, which a lot of people like to do because then their dog will sleep. But again, that goes back into the temperament thing. Your dog should be able to sleep anyway. So for her, yeah, I would suggest a walk in the morning, maybe with a little bit more gusto in it, and then a little bit of water, and then none for the rest of the day. And then for the rest of the day, just free exercise, sniffing, not super, no, not tug or anything like that. Is going to get her really thirsty.
Yeah, I think I totally hear what you're saying. I do think like me knowing Rika, me knowing her energy, I feel like
Yeah.
she has to be exercised though. Like
Yeah.
the exercise is more important to get that, out of the way than like the drinking of the water.
It also depends on how long your flight is. I mean, if it's like a 1 hour flight, then into the airport, 1 hour, out of the airport, half an hour, that's like maybe 3 hours max. So that's like a normal amount of time for a dog to not go to the bathroom. So that would, with that, you probably wouldn't have to restrict it at all. But, if you're flying 6 hours or something like that, that's 6 hours on the plane, an hour before, some amount of time afterwards. Like for that, I mean, depending on the dog again, restricting probably would be a better idea. But I mean, it depends on her also. And I think for pets also, because their temperament is not going to be necessarily like service dog temperament or whatever, some won't pee at the airport. So that means that they're not only being restricted from going to the bathroom at the airport, also before the flight too. Because with service dogs, usually what you're supposed to do is take them to one of the airport relief stations, like right before you go on the plane. And that way you're like cutting them off for like the shortest amount of time possible. But I know some pets that get nervous or they're not used to it or whatever, and they just won't go to the bathroom at all. And so you have the hour and a half or whatever beforehand that they also aren't going to the bathroom. So I mean, it depends on you really. And I mean, luckily, right now because of COVID, they're not booking like the center aisles, and so at least you're gonna have like not a person next to you and maybe not the whole row. So that's a bonus too, because then if she's shifting around or anything like that, you're not like immediately in someone else's space. So that's some leeway for you guys too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, LAX has a really big, actually really nice outdoor little potty,
Yeah,
dog
yeah,
potty spot
yeah.
area. So that'll be good for her. Also, when Rika's in work mode, that uh really tuckers her out too. So
Good.
thank you for making making note of that window.
Yeah,
Um,
and you could also show up early to the airport and train her right before the flight so that hopefully she'll go to sleep. And that way you're kind of like exercising her without, throwing a chocolate for an hour. I know, yeah, I do that with every time a dog goes on a flight for the first time. I take them early and then we train. And that way, you're kind of balancing again, the exercising versus giving them water and that kind of thing.
mhm. I feel like if this most stressful part about the whole thing is traveling with a pup, like
Yeah,
having a suitcase and then having my dog there that is a puppy, and how she will interact with the world and the airport
for sure.
during that time.
I think I think it's actually good that you're nervous, just in the sense that it means that you care. When people aren't nervous at all to go on a flight with their dog, like usually that means that their dog is terrible and they just don't care. So, I mean, I'm sure that your nerves don't help, but for you, but you know, it shows that you care about her behavior, which is good,
Mhm.
and how she's being, you know, received by the public. But if it makes you feel better, I have seen so many dogs in the airport and going on flights that I don't know how they survived it. So you having an actually trained dog, you'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, okay, thank you. That sets my mind at ease. So today, so what we've been doing is, like today at the grocery store, I went grocery shopping with
Yeah,
Rika. So she like was next to me on the leash, and we were walking with the moving cart, and there were other carts coming by, and so she was in
yeah,
the heel position because it is going to be a lot. Me rolling the suitcase, me holding the leash.
yeah.
It,
Yeah, so I mean, I can't condone training her in the grocery store, but if you wanted to take her on walks and bring your suitcase with you, I mean, you
oh
look
yeah.
good, but I mean, that would be the most realistic, really. I don't know what kind of
Mhm.
suitcase you have, but if you have one of those that has like the four wheels and you just kind of like push it, those are so easy. Um, versus ones that you have to like drag behind you. Um, but yeah, I mean, what I usually do is dog on one side, suitcase on the other side, backpack, and it's good to go. Yeah.
Then again, it's like who am I kidding? I'm only gonna wear like different shirts and workout pants, so I might just wear a backpack. But oh, we'll discuss that for another time. Okay. How's Rika? Echo Bear. How's Rika a service dog? She's not a service dog. Um, but I want to get her registered as an ESA.
Yeah, so luckily it's super easy. There's no registration. You just have to talk to your doctor. I mean, it's really just like service dog service dogs in that there's no registration. It's just a doctor's note. Um, but then the difference with, you know, I mean, obviously the difference they're not the same, but you know, from there you just have to submit that paperwork to the airline. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I always fly Alaska. I'm from New York, so I do that flight often. Well, pre-COVID.
Hmm.
Um, and I was on there. I called and was on their site, and to get your dog on the flight is very, very simple. Like it's the forms are right there on the website.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So that's anyone that is flying with their dog or thinking about flying Alaska. And then also Kristen, the helping pup, had mentioned Southwest is also a really good
Yeah.
um, dog friendly airline.
Yeah. Different airlines have different um, um, friendlinesses. I've actually had really good experiences with Delta, but only with the service animals. I don't know how they are with pets. But if you have a service animal, anyone watching this, Delta is really good. Every time I've gone, they have come to me and asked if I want to change my seat to an aisle with no people in it. I didn't even have to ask them or anything, so that was really great. Um, but yeah, I mean, here's the thing: if you do all the paperwork and you your dog is not a total shit show, like they're gonna let you on. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I've been on a plane where a dog growled at my dog the whole 4 hours, and it was fine. So like really the bar, when I say the bar is low, I mean it is incredibly low. Like I don't know how the owners of the dog weren't stressed, considering people like you who actually have trained dogs are stressed, but
Mm-hmm.
whatever. I mean, and that's the other thing is you can't control what other people do. You just can't. So that's why working on your dog and focusing on them and not other people is the most important part. You know, I can't control if someone brings their pet into Safeway, so I train my dog to be able to handle that. I can't control if the
Mm-hmm.
dog's going to growl at him on the flight, so I train him to handle that. It's one of those things where it's just like a lot of people get really fired up and angry about other people, and I agree, there's things that aren't legal, things that aren't ethical, but what are you going to do about it? You know what I mean? No one cares. If they cared, they wouldn't do it. So it's
Mhm.
really one of those things where you just have to take that energy and time and put it into your dog, and as long as you and your dog are fine, who cares about other people?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so Echo Bear is saying, oh, how is Rika calm? So Rika is calm because we have been practicing being calm.
Good.
And the big thing is, I mean, we had been practicing calm in the house when she was very, very little. And then I think as the dog starts getting more trained, you loosen up on everything. And then I think you kind of like think that the dog is all fine. And then you realize the dog is not fine. Um, and yeah, I have just been making an effort to be really cognizant of me and my vibe. And like, if I'm a little bit stressed out or like um, anxious, like not to project that onto her because then she gets all anxious. And it's helped in every aspect our of our life. Like even with Tug, like I
Yeah.
feel like she's way better at Tug. Like the drop or done or out has gotten so much better because it's simply like a different body energy.
Yeah.
Like earlier I was like getting her going, getting her all wild, like running, like doing like a zoomy type, and then I
Mhm.
would just do done, and then she would stop, and like it was the game was over,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's just all energy. So
Yeah,
how
that's
is Rick? Yeah.
that's something that we do with our super high drive puppies, whether they're labs for detection or Malinois or whatever, is from day one we start training and play with an activation cue, usually like, are you ready, or do you want to work, or something like that. And then, when they're like itty bitty puppies, like 8 weeks old, and then, immediately go into playing, training, whatever. And then as soon as it's done, just all done, and then they go in the crate. And then the idea
Mm-hmm.
is that that transfers eventually to like an immediate off switch, essentially, which, for a really high drive dog, sometimes they need that to have the clear window of this is when you're working, this is when you're not. And so that's something I didn't do with my last Malinois that much. I did it a little bit, and then I kind of slacked on that. And so, he was not at all like Rika or this pup. And he could not settle outside of his crate. He was incredible in his crate. He would sleep literally like 10 hours in his crate, but he had to be in his crate. So for the job he's going to do, it doesn't matter. That's fine. And that's part of why he's so good for that job, is because he was very much a go to work, kennel, go to work, kennel. That's his ideal life, is really go out, bite things, sniff things, go back to sleep, get up and do it again. But for this other puppy, I'm trying to get a little more out of the crate settleness. And so, I mean, you're right, your energy totally dictates that. What I do right now is I'll put him in his kennel, and I have it on my bed because I don't know, I'm a fur mom. And then I wait 15 minutes for him to settle down in there, and then I just open the door, and then I just ignore him. I don't even look at him. I don't pet him. I don't do anything, because your energy really does. If I said, "Puppy, come here, come lie down, come settle," that's not going to get him to settle, right? So I just ignore him, and 80% of the time he'll just come and curl up next to me and go to sleep.
Mm-hmm. Wait, when you say you have the kennel in the bed, the crate?
Yeah, the little crate just like on top of it.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, and you're sleeping next to it like that.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's cute. Okay, anything else? So there's a lot of mal people that just got mal puppies. What are you going through right now at this very moment, and how can you help other people watching?
I think, you know, I think you really have to, the key to successfully raising a Malinois puppy is embracing the Malinois and not expecting something else. Because for me, I know what Mal puppies are like, and I know what they're supposed to be, and that's why I got one. I got one specifically because I know the puppies are like this. And so for me, as a professional with experience with them, it's super easy. Like, they want to train, they want to work, they're energetic and fun and whatever. And so for me, it's actually not difficult at all. What's more difficult is super low maintenance puppies that don't want to do anything. That's the hard ones for me, because how do I get them to want to train? You know what I mean? Um, but I see people having issues when they're like, why isn't my Malinois puppy, why is he biting me? Stuff like that, where it's like, well, you got a Malinois, so that's why. And it's really just, if you accept them for the breed they are and you work with what you have and not what you want them to be, then you'll succeed. Malinois are really not that difficult if you are a dog person who either is a professional or has a professional working for them or whatever, and you are satisfying their drives and their needs. If you can do that, it's really not that difficult.
Well said. Let me see if I have any other questions for you. Let's see. Did you train her yourself or with a trainer? If a trainer, did you train with the Golden Mal? Cody Bear Paws. Oh, this Cody Bear Paws. I train her myself, but with Landy, our dog behaviorists, and then trainers who, if you follow us, Andrew, Oscar. I mean, the whole village. We're really lucky. We've gotten input from so many amazing people. I've trained all of my other pups that I currently do. Okay, does anyone have questions? These are all mostly comments, so to go through would be kind of pointless. Okay, any topics you think are important, Jasmine, to cover? Yeah.
I mean, I don't really know what you've covered on this channel so far, or not channel. What's it called? Account.
Account. Oh wait, Zelda the Rot. How to ensure you have reliable retrieve or any other command.
Um, a combination of positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement. Again, it's a balance, having incentive to do something and having incentive not to do something else. And together you get the behavior you want. With retrieves, I pressure them after I've free shaped it, and so it kind of makes it really secure and really solid. Like, my dog will hold something. I mean, I've had videos of it. I'll put raw meat in his mouth, and he knows not to drop it until he's told to. And it's really just clarity and keeping expectations consistent. The difficulty I see people have is when they don't even realize they're doing this, but sometimes they'll be like, oh, like, usually they have, let's say for, a heel, it's like, okay, I want him here and ignoring this and doing this and doing this. But then they switch environments and they're like, oh, well, today let's let him do this and this, but not this, and the dog doesn't know that they're in a new environment. You know what I mean? Like, keep the commands consistent and you'll get consistency.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have a question from Rachel Evans. Do you have any advice for training dogs that aren't into training?
Depending on why they're not into training, it depends on what you want to do with them. If you want obedience, any dog can have obedience. You just have to use a variety of methods and tools and methodologies. If you want to do like trick training and fun stuff like that with them, not every dog wants to do that, and you can't force them to. You know what I mean? Like, I think that every dog should have obedience, whether or not they want the obedience, because it's a safety thing. But, I'm a big believer in not making dogs do things they don't want to do when it comes to optional things. If your dog doesn't like agility, don't make him do agility. If your dog doesn't like training tricks, don't train tricks. And that's, again, part of why you're supposed to get the dog that's right for you, because, you can't make them do things they don't want to do, and it's not fair to. So, I mean, with obedience, I would reach out to a professional because they'll be able to evaluate your situation specifically. But if you're talking about sports and tricks and other things like that, you might just have to say, not this dog,
Mm-hmm. Okay. My Aussie dog, do you recommend a chew toy on the plane?
Some people do. I don't. I don't not recommend them. I just don't see a benefit to them. I mean, it depends on the dog, but I know that for Ryan specifically, he chews on like nylabones and stuff like when he feels like it. He doesn't really like them that much because he likes chews that taste like something and that he can consume. But all the chews like that are really smelly, and I don't think it's respectful to give a chew like that on an airplane because, you're what the air in the plane is the only air you get. So, if you're putting like bully stick odor into that plane, it's going to be there for the next 6 hours. So if your dog would chew on an odorless chew with enthusiasm, sure, you could do it, but I find more success in just keeping the dog calm, petting them, maybe giving them food for staying calm, but it's kind of the same as what you're saying is matching energy. Sometimes chews and food and all this reinforcement, all this positive association stuff can spin the dog up and actually make them more of whatever they're feeling. So, it's you have to figure out what's best for your dog. I know a lot of dogs who would get too excited over chews or rewards. They just need to learn how to be neutral. So with puppies in the kennel, I'll give them chews sometimes. And this is related, I promise, but I'll give them chews sometimes, but for the most part, I want the crate to be calmness. No, not you get a chew every time you go in, get excited. Just this is sleep time. You know what I mean? And I think that being on the plane is similar in that you might give them a couple treats during takeoff, just for fun. But really, the important part is that they're learning to relax. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is a really interesting question. This is from the Golden Life of Luca. As the person that does corrections for a puppy, have you had any situations where the dog seemed to not really enjoy just chilling with you? Okay,
Wait, what?
I think this is, so I give corrections to Rika. I correct her with leash pops.
Yeah.
I think this person is asking because of that, does Rika not like chilling with me?
She's not a young puppy though. Rika's not a young puppy.
She's 8 months, but we were training her. I mean, from the start, day one, we had structure for her.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, how does it work with your puppy? Do you correct at all, or is it just all fun?
I mean, I'll like smack him a little bit if he's being too noisy, like in his crate or something. But like, maybe I shouldn't have said that on here. But
Okay, but this is the real stuff. I'm
yeah,
sorry, but like, I love you guys so much. I love you trainers so much. But like, I it, it's nobody talks about the real shit.
yeah,
Nobody is honest about it.
yeah.
Like, and this person, if they're saying like,
Professional,
yeah.
I'm they're great and they have a lot of wisdom, but they do hide a lot of stuff because if they don't, no one's gonna listen to them for the stuff that they do know about. You know what I mean? And it's not like I'm like beating him, but if he's screaming in his crate for 5 minutes, I'm gonna give him a little shove, and then he's quiet. But I think it really depends on the the why. Why are you correcting this dog? Because the reason why people say don't correct puppies is because they don't know what they're talking about, and because they assume that the puppy has not yet learned what they're supposed to be doing or why they're getting the correction. And that's most of the time true. So if you're like correcting a 9-week-old puppy for not holding a sit, okay, stop. That's not appropriate. But if you've got a 4-month-old and they've been working on this and this and this and they know this and whatever and this, and you give them a correction, if they respond to it well, it's because they understood it and it worked for them. If they don't respond well, it's probably because they didn't understand it. And so, all these rules about this is when you can use this collar and this is when you use this collar and this age specifically. Dogs don't hit 6 months old and magically become ready for whatever. It depends on how you've been raising them and what their temperament is like and what they're able to process and all that kind of thing. Like a pet dog that I've been raising from 8 weeks old and the finesse isn't important and whatever, they can be ready for an e-collar at 6 months because we've been working on obedience for that long. Whereas a detection dog, a lot of detection puppies, you don't put a lot of obedience on them in the beginning because you want them to have that like free spirit in them, which sounds stupid, but whatever. And so they probably wouldn't be ready at 8 months or 6 months because you haven't been training that with them. It just depends on the dog. And I think that if you're correcting appropriately, it's not going to affect your relationship, and it's actually going to improve it.
Agree with you. Okay. I have a 6-month-old Mal Husky. How can I provide corrections? He's 64 pounds.
I mean, it would depend on what the correction is for, what you've been training already, response to different things. Leash pressure is always kind of my go-to. If I'm handling a dog for the first time and it doesn't know anything, or it doesn't know me, or whatever, leash pressure is probably the most intuitive way for a dog to interpret something, because it's physical and their neck is sensitive, and it's pretty immediate. With e-collars, you have to condition them. There's a conditioning process they have to go through, and it takes like weeks. With prong collars, like, the conditioning process is kind of just like walk around and let them figure it out, because it is really that intuitive, and you don't have to do a lot of different conditioning for that. So, I mean, if you wanted more specific advice, I would reach out to a professional, but collar pressure is the most intuitive for every dog.
I'm just so stunned at at the comments about the prom.
But
Uh, just people are really, really upset by the prong. Any tips on?
people are upset about everything.
Yeah. Okay. Any tips on preventing a dog from being e-collar wise?
Have the collar on 24/7, or as close to it as you can get. My golden retriever has worn his collar from sun up till sundown since he first started conditioning, and he will continue to for the rest of his life. Do I use it then? No. In fact, I actually haven't even pushed the button in 3 days, but he wears it anyway, because that's how you build neutrality. I can't wean him off of his e-collar because he doesn't know what it is. He doesn't know what an e-collar is. His collar goes on and it comes off, and that's life to him. It's not connected to the stimulation. So on the off chance that, I mean, not that he would run out actually, so, whatever, but let's say he runs out towards the street and he's not wearing it. He doesn't know he's not wearing it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And part of the benefit with e-collars that you don't get from any other type of corrective tool is that there's like an act of God aspect to it, where it's not immediately being connected to you. If you pop your dog's prong, they know who did it, right? But if you hit the button and the remote is like in your pocket or something, they don't necessarily know that you did it. They know that it happened, and they know how to fix what they've done, but they don't necessarily associate it with you. And so the benefit of that is you kind of get this like ability to kind of create the e-collar as an environmental thing for them, so that whether or not they're actually wearing the collar, if you've raised them appropriately, they don't know when they are and are not wearing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Larry Crone brought up that like suspicious behavior, like with wires or like digging a hole.
Yeah.
Yeah. We haven't used the e-collar yet, but we plan to. Okay.
Yeah, it's my favorite. It's my favorite.
What do you do if a dog ignores collar pressure?
It depends on the dog and what the collar pressure is for. So, like, some people, I mean, it's kind of like it depends on the trainer really, but there's people who teach dogs to yield to leash pressure and people who teach dogs to resist it. And so, those are two completely opposite behaviors. And so if a dog is just completely ignoring it, it's highly likely that they just don't feel it. And so, I use a lot of slip leads, and then I use prongs as well. And a lot of people don't understand that when I'm evaluating whether a dog needs a slip lead or a prong, it's just their physical sensitivity. It's not that dogs that need prongs are like more difficult dogs, because oftentimes they're actually some of the most trainable and fun. It's just that if a dog has been pulling for 3 years, they might not feel slip lead pressure just because they actually just can't feel it. And that's kind of actually the same with e-collar levels. People are like, oh, dogs above 10 are so difficult. No, it's just that they can't feel it until 10. You know what I mean? It's really just all about physical sensitivity. And that's, again, why people say don't use prongs in puppies, is because usually they're so sensitive that they don't need it. But, and that's why like it's more likely for an older dog who's had thicker skin and however many years of being desensitized to leash pressure and whatever, are more likely to use a prong because, they have that desensitized aspect to their neck, whereas puppies don't. But, it's really just about physical sensitivity. And luckily, prongs are one of the tools where you don't have to really condition them to it. And there's, no really wrong way to do it. You can just kind of put it on them. And it might not be the most effective, but you're not going to hurt them. Nothing's going to happen. So if you are having trouble with flat collar or slip lead, put them on a prong and see how that goes.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God, I'm laughing at Wild with Winston. And I'm gonna go with Wild with Winston's questions. So what do you use for your e-collar setup? Bungee, biothane, comfort pads, wings?
I use wings on every dog, and then I use the Canine Tactical Gear bungee thing, the bungee collar. But I've had a lot of people actually say that didn't work for them. Um, it works for me. I don't know. I didn't like the bungee one that has like the quick release buckle because when my dog would roll or scratch, it would come off. He would like hit it with his foot and it would come off. Okay, Bodhi. But like the Canine Tactical Gear one is a Cobra buckle, so they can't take it off. It's like even accidentally. Because I've had him lose it in like a field and I didn't realize until we got home and it was a whole thing. But for me, it's really about whether it can accidentally come off or not. Yeah, that's kind of it.
Maya S. Dog, do you use prong and e-collar together? I've seen some use both. I'm also wondering if that can damage the collar.
A collar can't be damaged.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at the comment.
No, me too. Bodhi, you have to watch. Like, you can just hit the X and then you don't have to watch this anymore.
We're laughing because so Bodhi, the German Shepherd, doesn't think it's okay to use a prong collar.
Yeah.
I think look at the dog in front of you. Don't care about what I'm doing with my dog.
Yeah.
I don't know what you think, but
no one is making you watch this live or use a prong collar. So luckily, free to do whatever. What was the question?
It was, do you use a prong and e-collar together?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I really like the e-collar. It's one of my favorite tools for how versatile it is. And so usually I'll do e-collar and then either prong or slip lead, depending on, again, the dog's sensitivity and that kind of thing. I like the slip lead because it's so, like, easy to put on and off and I'm lazy. But sometimes some dogs work better with prongs. I know also, like, I work with disabled handlers a lot. So people who are like in a wheelchair, sometimes they like using the prong, even if they don't correct the dog with it, just because if the dog were to hit the end of it, the dog will feel it harder and won't pull them out of their chair, essentially. But different tools, different people. That's the beauty of dog training, is it's custom.
Exactly. Okay. Question. A lot of questions I get basically boil down to building engagement and making yourself valuable. What's the elevator pitch version of building engagement?
Think about everything in your dog's life that they get reward and reinforcement from. Drinking water, going to the bathroom, eating food, resting, physical affection, sniffing, free time, walks, play, all these different things. Your dog receives reward from it, and that's why they do it. However many of those you can make yourself a pinnacle point in, that's going to build engagement. So hand feeding instead of feeding in a bowl, playing with your dog instead of having them play with another dog, letting your dog out to potty versus just letting them out in the backyard, having them wait and release for water instead of just having it free. There's like an infinite amount of things in your dog's life that they receive reward from. And if you can tailor as many of those to you as you can, your dog's going to see value in you because of those.
Okay, from Echo Bear, what is your main tip on protection work? I've done every other training except protection.
You need to work with a professional. That is, what's it called? Not debatable. I don't know how to speak.
Non-negotiable.
Non-negotiable. That's it. You have to work with a professional. I really don't care how much experience you have with any type of training. You have to work with a professional for protection training. just because you cannot appropriately decoy your own dog. So, you know, the greats of dog training, the ones going to championships for this stuff, they have to work with another person. It doesn't, you know, it's not about experience or capability. You have to have at least one other person. And especially, you need someone to evaluate your dog and make sure that they are okay to do protection work, because I have seen a lot of dogs that weren't, and at best it's a liability. At worst, your dog is going to get put down. So making sure your dog is even appropriate for it needs to be the first step, and that comes from a professional evaluation.
Awesome. Oh, what do you think is the best age to spay or neuter a dog?
Spaying is tricky because there's like this like sweet spot age where if you do it after this but before this, then you reduce the most amount of risks. I don't really know what that is because I don't own female dogs, because I don't like them. I don't like dealing with heats. I don't want to deal with any of that. So I just don't own them. So I don't really know about that. But for male dogs, 2 years old or never. I mean, my dogs probably won't be fixed ever for their health, and you know, I'm a responsible person in some things, and you know, in the thing, if not letting them reproduce on their own, that's one thing that I'm responsible with. So I keep them intact for their health, and also because I just don't see the reason to put them under anesthesia and surgery for that unless there is a medical reason. So when the spay and neuter has been a fight between vets and dog trainers from the beginning of time. However, I will say that the US is one of the only countries where neutering and spaying so young is common practice. I'm just saying. I'll leave it at that. But, you know, allowing your dog to grow is important.
Mm-hmm. Our Wasabi was a Wasabi is your current puppy.
Yeah.
And it's a boy, right?
Yeah.
And Stinky was a boy?
He was a boy too, yeah.
Okay. Did you want to have male Malinois?
Yeah, just because they don't go into heat. So, I mean, that's really it. People always ask if there's like some deeper reason, but it's really just that they don't go into heat. I don't like dealing with that. It's gross, and it's so much. I want no part in that.
That's funny. Let's see. Okay, what has been the biggest struggle with each of your dogs from Wild with Winston?
With Stinky, it was having him settle out of his crate, so I just gave up, and then that made the problem worse. But whatever. With Wasabi right now, there's no really big struggle, except he's been having diarrhea, so maybe that's a struggle, but it's too early to be able to see any temperamental challenges with him. With Finley, his gear shyness, he hates wearing things. Like, he hates it. You pull out, like, great vote of confidence. I pull out this like new harness that I spent $100 on, and he immediately runs to the corner of the room because he doesn't want to wear it. He hates raincoats, harnesses, anything like that. He doesn't like to have it on his body. And so we're at a place of like neutrality, and that's the best we're gonna get. That's definitely the biggest struggle been for us.
Mm-hmm. For us, I mean, it's always, she's 8 months now. We're always we always have struggles. Like the last month, I think the biggest thing was doing this like reverse crate training. Robert Cabral suggested that we make outside of the crate like very chill, like no activity, and make the crate an event. So because what was happening was when I was filming, I would be like talking, engaging, and then she would want to come over to me and like be in on the action, and she would cry, and like it's really distracting, and it's hard for me. It's making me anxious. So
Yeah.
like figuring out Reika's mind and kind of like controlling the vibe, you know, like calming, you know, like, okay, you're gonna chill, you know, and like having her be chill. So I think mood maybe.
Yeah.
off switch.
Yeah, and like FOMO, like wanting to be in on everything.
Yeah. Okay. What tips do you have to start training an 8-week-old puppy?
Don't focus on teaching them commands and focus on teaching them how to learn. You know, it doesn't help a dog that can sit and down and spin and do all these different things if they can only do it in your living room. You know what I mean? Like building
Yeah,
that engagement, building that lifestyle, teaching them marker words and all these different puzzle pieces to how to teach things later will do the most for you. It's slow and steady wins the race.
definitely. Well said. Okay. Rachel Evans is asking, are you going to spay Rika? If not, how do you plan on handling her going into heat? So she actually did go into heat. Like,
Already?
yeah.
Oh.
Well, okay. So, but her blood, this is the weird thing. So our vet, I don't want Dave to hear me. Our vet is interesting. Um, I mean, he's awesome. He's very, very great vet. But he wasn't able to tell. Like he's like, yeah, Reich is probably in heat right now,
Mm-hmm.
and then that was it. But the bleeding was like actually back in August, so 6, yeah. And the bleeding was very, very light. It was like very blotchy. We just noticed she was super moody. She was peeing all the time, all the time. Like she would just like lift the legs and pee and pee and pee. And that lasted like 4 weeks, and the blood a few days. It really wasn't bad.
Yeah.
But how are we going to deal with it? We're going to wait because she's so small. I mean, now she's growing. Now she's much bigger, but um, she was pretty tiny for a while.
That's so funny you said it wasn't that bad because I was going, oh, that sounds terrible.
Really? No,
Yeah.
it was like we thought it was more. We're like, is that dirt or what's? Yeah, it was fine. She's also like a tiny little thing.
Yeah, that's true.
I've heard a lot of people like the dog goes into heat and it's like diapers and a whole huge mess. So when we
Yeah.
get there, I'll report back. Okay. They can do slides under the microscope to see if the cells are actually in stages of heat. Ask your vet about it. Thank you, AK Hellhounds. I mean, now we'll just have to wait for the next heat. um, let's see. I think it can become more extreme because that was a baby heat. That makes sense. How do you manage shedding? Do you use any special grooming supplies?
I vacuum twice a day. um, and I should brush him. I don't as much as I should. So I bet if I brushed him consistently, he wouldn't shed as much. But I also take him to get professionally groomed every 3 or 4 weeks, and that actually helps a lot because she does like blow him out and do all that stuff, and so that kind of keeps it under control. But at a certain point, like if you have a shedding breed, they're gonna shed, and there's really nothing you can do about it.
Um, Bodhi, do you think crate training is always necessary?
Yeah. I think I think people see crate training as you use it now and then eventually you don't use it altogether, or you either use it or you don't, but it's not that black and white. Crates come in and out of every dog's life, you know. Some need it at night, but not during the day. Others need it during the day, but not at night. Or maybe some dogs don't need it on most days, but at Christmas dinner or a party, they go in their crate, or you know, all these different things. Like it's just like any other tool. You bring it when you need it, you put it away when you don't, and um, it can come in and out. And I think whether or not someone plans to use a crate in their house, if your dog gets hit by a car and has to stay at the vet overnight, do you want them to be comfortable in the crate, or do you want them to freak out because they've never been in one before?
100%. Okay, what is your stance on on a show line German Shepherd from Echo Bear?
Um, for what? A
For
showline
what Echo
Shepherd
Bear?
for hunting? Probably not. A showline German Shepherd for someone who wants a showline German Shepherd? probably a good choice. Um, like, it's hard to answer a question on what I think about a breed when I don't know what the dog is going to be for, or anything about why.
Okay, from Golden Life of Luke, my good friend. Best way to introduce two dogs, one of which who is nervous.
Neutrality. Teach them to exist around each other before teaching them to try to interact. You know, going on walks together, but like a structured walk where every dog is heeling next to each other, place work or downstays next to each other, taking them to like a wide open space where they can like coexist and they don't feel pressured to interact. Um, Especially with a nervous dog, they're nervous because they're anticipating an interaction, right? They're anticipating that the dog is going to bully them or go up to them or do whatever. So if you teach the dog that that's not going to happen, sometimes they start to come out of their shell on their own.
Okay. What tips do you have for someone who wants a male in the future? First one from a reputable breeder.
Um, the breeder situation is controversial, so I'm not just not going to talk about that because I don't want hate. But um, as for if you want one, I would say, why do you want one? Do you want one to do this sport with, or do you want one to do this with? Because you saw one on the internet, or any of these different reasons. Because there are good reasons to want a Malinois and bad ones, and I've seen both. And there's owners for first time Malinois owners, and it turns out great. Like, you like to train, you like to do this, you like to play tug with her, you enjoy having her. And then there's people who get a Malinois, and because they got it for the wrong reasons, they hate the dog, and they're like, why isn't it a golden retriever? And so I would ask yourself why, and from there, talk to professional trainers. Usually trainers who are experienced with Malinois can hook you up with a good one. And I would also say, don't compromise on the quality of the dog because you think it'll be easier. Like, a lot of people say you should get like a more pet quality dog because it'll be easier, but usually when Malinois are supposed to be high drive, and so when you compromise on that, you're probably going to compromise on nerves and structure and health and all these different other things. If you are able to have a Malinois, get a good one, because otherwise you're going to have actually more problems than if you just had the Malinois in the first place.
So Spooners for Life is asking, would you recommend Malinois for Medica Alert Mobility psychiatrist service work?
For the majority of people, no.
Why?
Because why would you take a dog that has been bred to be in the military, or be police dogs, or perform at the highest levels of protection sports and this and that, and why would you want to put them in a job where they're going to walk around and do tasks every so often? You know what I mean? Like, if someone said, oh, I really want a Malinois as a service dog, and I also want to compete in Schutzhund, and I like Mals as a breed, and I'm a very active person, and this, that would be a great option. If someone is just saying, I want a Malinois, that's it, probably not. You know what I mean? I'm not the kind of person to gatekeep breeds. I don't think that, there's a blanket, yes, you should, or no, you shouldn't, but the vast majority of people don't want a Malinois as a service dog for the right reason.
Mm-hmm. What is your, when you are introducing Wasabi to protection sports, what will that journey be like for you?
So right now, we're just kind of working on nothing. Eventually, we'll start getting into just agitation and working on building um, prey and that kind of thing. Although, you know, again, controversial, so don't send me hate messages if you disagree. But I think that, if you want to do something competitively or at a high level with a certain dog, it shouldn't be the kind of dog that you have to build. I don't anticipate building his prey drive. I anticipate channeling it. And that's a difference that a lot of people don't understand. Same with confidence and nerves and all that kind of thing. I don't think I'm going to build his confidence on the bite. I think I'm going to teach him how to use his confidence to persevere. persevere. Yeah. And so, you know, baby bite work is really just, it's no different than a flirt, pull, and tug, really. That's really what it is you tie them back and you just have them chase it, and then they get to bite it, and then you choke them off, and then you do it again. And that's really just the bare bones of what you do with puppies. And then he's gonna teeth, so then you kind of just stop and work on obedience, and then they get their adult teeth in, and then you can really start to go with them.
So Jessica's asking, do you feel your techniques work for high drive males?
I think that all techniques that are based in science will work for any dog because all dogs, regardless of breed, have the same psychology. You know, my Malinois works off of operant conditioning and classical conditioning. So does my Golden Retriever. So does my Board and Trains. So if your methods are rooted in science, then they'll work for anything.
How do you know when it's time to wash a working dog puppy?
It usually depends on what the job is for, but usually you can see before you even select the puppy, and then you just don't choose them. But you know, for me, confidence is the biggest one. I think that on a certain level, you can capitalize on different types of drives and whatever, and kind of bring out more in the dog. But I've never seen confidence able to be manipulated like that. That's the one thing that either the dog has it or not, and that's kind of it.
Okay, from Lexi Jeans, what do you think of a Malinois for a first-time owner, but active and wants to become really invested in dog training with this dog and their second dog?
I would say it could be a good option. And, you know, this is my advice to anyone who wants a Malinois but has never had one or has never had a dog is to consult with a professional trainer who has experience with them, because you can talk through why you want one, what you expect it'll be like, you know, all that, and they can tell you based on their experience of seeing it go right and seeing it go wrong whether or not you should get one, and then help you after you have one, and you know, introduce you to all of that. But yeah, I mean, I've seen really great first time Malinois owners. If you follow Red the Mally, um, Jen, I think Red might be their first dog ever, and he's great. And I've also seen it go terribly. So you know, I think a professional, like talking to them, and before you even have the puppy, just talking to them to see whether it's a good idea.
Hmm. Do you see a big difference in normal German Shepherds and a Malinois?
Yeah, I mean they're different breeds, so yeah. I think that the difference for me majorly, at least with the types of Malinois that I work with, is German Shepherds have more defense drive, and so kind of on the same lines, they also have less confidence, and that's one of the issues in the breed right now is that even well-bred German Shepherds that are confident dogs, even in those lines, there's just a nerviness a little bit there, um, and you know that can be very difficult to get away from. And one of the reasons why German Shepherds aren't as like PSA and like ring sports, like French ring and Mondio, um, they're heavily dominated by Malinois, and part of that is because of the drive differences in Malinois and German Shepherds.
Okay, so from Juan 24, my puppy eats desperately when feeding. He is 2 months. How can I correct this?
I wouldn't correct that. That's great that your puppy likes to eat. I would use that to your advantage and start training your puppy.
What do you think of bark collars? My 7-month-old mix has started barking excessively.
I think they're fine, depending on the situation. I mean, if your dog is like reactive, I don't suggest using a bark collar. If your dog is just barking in the crate, that could be a good option for a bark collar. Um, if possible, I like to just use a regular e-collar so that I can push the button, because sometimes the bark collar gets it wrong or doesn't correct or corrects when it shouldn't or whatever. But you know, for the right situation, they're great, especially if it's like they bark when you're not home. That's when bark collars could be good.
What do you look for in service dog breeders?
I look for health testing and some sort of working ability. So gun dog work or um, like titles like rally, something like that, that proves trainability, because a lot of people who market themselves as service dog breeders do like therapy dog work, or like their dog is a service dog or something. But again, because there's no regulations on what a service dog is, you could have the most trash dog and it could technically legally be a service dog. That doesn't mean that you should be breeding it. And I also think that the best service dog prospects, unless they come from a large kennel that breeds for a program, um, no breeder should be advertising themselves as a service dog breeder, because you can't guarantee that. And a lot of the prospects that I find are just various kennels all over that just happen to have a good prospect, because part of the reason why guide dogs for the blind and canine companions for independence produce the puppies they do is because they have been selectively breeding their own stock for like so many years. Um, but the average breeder doesn't have that. And so rather than looking for a service dog breeder, I would look for a good breeder in general and then find the right puppy.
Okay, what do you find? I'm gonna do last two questions. Jasmine, this is awesome.
Yeah.
You're awesome. Um, how do I know if my puppy is in the crate too much? From Algorithm and Blues.
I don't really think there can be too much in the crate. I think that, yeah, yeah. I mean, puppies sleep a lot. Like, they should be sleeping, like, I think it's like 22 hours a day or something. So chances are your puppy is not in the crate too much. Yeah.
Okay, in regards to not neutering, I've read that intact males could become aggressive and territorial as they get older, especially towards other dogs. Do you think this is possible?
Some breeds are predisposed to same-sex aggression, like Dobermans. Um, besides Besides that, no. I mean, not because they're intact. In fact, neutered dogs usually display higher rates of aggression and nervousness and territorialness because they are neutered. So, if you have a breed that is predisposed to that, it's possible, but it wouldn't be because they're intact or because you haven't neutered them. If yours is a Doberman, then yeah, that's highly possible. So, but again, that's because your dog is a Doberman, not because they're not neutered.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what activities can we do to continue building drive in a Malinois puppy while it's teething 3 to 6 months?
I mean, that's part of the reason why, I and the trainers I've learned from, and, everybody kind of believes that you shouldn't have to be building it and building and building it, because there's times when you can't. And that's why genetically you want them to just have it. There's not a lot you can do with puppies while they're teething except agitation. But, that's why during those times I just work on obedience, and that's it.
Please explain more of why they're more aggressive because they are neutered.
There's no evidence for why exactly. However, there have been a lot of studies that have proven correlation. And a lot of vets that I've spoken to believe that it's because testosterone builds confidence. And so when you take the testosterone away, then the lack of confidence can turn into nervousness, which then can then lead to nervous aggression and territorialness. I always say, like, confidence is linked to how friendly they are. Like, it really is. Like, golden retrievers are super super friendly because usually they're so confident. And even with like police canines who are supposed to be biting people, the best ones are social because they have the confidence in them. And so it makes sense to me, and the correlation is there, and that's part of why I don't neuter, is because regardless of why, the evidence is there.
Do you think it's healthier to not spay neuter dogs?
Yeah, I mean, there's also been studies and evidence showing that you can have higher rates of hip dysplasia and arthritis and this or that in dogs that are fixed. And so that's why, um, like, together, combined temperamentally and physically, I do believe that it is healthier not to. But again, with females, there's like a sweet spot and it's different. So when I refer to spaying and neutering, I'm mostly talking about male dogs.
Okay. Um, I mean, this is just a piggyback. Oh. Uh, What are ways you stay up to date on dog science behaviors? What are your favorite sources of reputable information?
Studies that have been like reading exact studies. I don't like reading news articles, like paraphrasing them because, sometimes they can get it wrong or whatever. I like reading the exact studies, looking at the data, taking it to whoever is authorized to speak about it, an orthopedic vet, a regular veterinarian, a nutritionist, whatever, and talking to them about the data and, what that means based on, again, it's no different than dog training. You combine the science and the expertise and you get your opinion based on that.
What is your stance on the health issues with show line German Shepherds and if they should keep being bred?
I mean, there's health issues in every breed, every mix, whatever. I the breeds that typically have the most health issues are usually because of the breed structure, like pugs and like Frenchies and stuff like that. Um, when people talk about like the health issues in German Shepherds, it's usually from backyard breeding, which is not indicative of the breed. So,
Okay. The very last question, for real, would be describe your ideal dog, both externally and internally.
um, if you mix a or no, a Malinois and a Golden Retriever, that's my ideal dog. That's why I have one of each. If they could be one dog, I'd have one. Um, I mean, unfortunately, they're like so contradictory to each other, so you can don't do that, please. But if you could ethically and have it work out, that's what I would do. Be quiet. Um, yeah, just a dog that can do protection work and protection sports, and then super driven, high drive, high energy, motivated, like social, confident, just all the things.
Mhm. Awesome. Okay. And my ideal is Rika, Belgian Malinois, for
There you go.
all those reasons why we got a Belgian Malinois and people
Yeah,
get a Belgian. Okay. I am signing off, but Jasmine, this was awesome. It was so nice to meet you
yeah,
and you
too.
answer all these questions. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Post
Hope
it
your
on
flight.
Wasabi.
Yeah, let me know.
Okay.
All
Sounds
right,
good. I'll post this too, by the way.
all right, cool.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.